just don't see the Matt. I just don't see the problem as a Christian. I moved from young Earth creationists because when I was finally confronted with enough information and said, "Hey, wait a minute, this can't be literal. There's just too much information," and I changed my mind. What's it, Matt, that's just so hard for you in the face of all the evidence? Why can't you just change your mind?
My approach is I mold science to fit the Bible. I don't mold the Bible to fit science.
Yeah, why can't you just change your mind?
Because my approach is more consistent.
So what you believe is true because you believe it, and nothing can change it because you believe that thing first. And
yeah, what I'm saying
you
is
have no ability to change your mind.
The Bible, I reject science, not the Bible.
That's not how science works.
If scientists' interpretation of the data is a better way to say conflict with the Bible, I reject scientists' interpretation of the data.
But then you're not even using science.
Yeah, Matt, and millions of Christians accept evolution. They just say these creation day descriptions are metaphorical, and you're still a Christian.
Yeah, I would just disagree with them.
Based on because the book says this, and so the book must be true. And
standard of, I think that molding scientific data, interpretations of scientific data.
So you're literally describing. Right. So you're literally describing an ad hoc argument. You're literally describing an ad hoc argument, which you said earlier seems to be the case.
That's what you just
seems to be the case. So you said, yeah.
That's what you want. So what's the issue? Because
you don't understand what ad hoc.
Why would I?
Obviously, Matt. He obviously doesn't understand what an ad hoc argument is, guys. He says he gives you the definition, but Matt's cognitive dissonance must be off the charts. The cognitive dissonance that Matt has must be off the chart. I can't even imagine what goes on his brain when he can describe an ad hominem attack.
When he can, you're the one that thinks people should adjust the Bible to fit science. So you're.
That's not what I said, Matt. Yeah, that's not what I said.
That's not what I said. Me of it? That's rich.
That's not what I said. That's not. Yeah. So Matt, earlier tonight in the room, Matt, you defined an ad hoc. Matt, you defined an ad hoc argument earlier as taking new data and trying to make it fit to your already held conclusion. That was your definition of an ad hoc argument, and you just said that you are taking science and making it fit the Bible, which was your previously held belief. So by definition, you're using ad hoc argumentation, Matt. It's not the other way around. The evolutionists here are not using ad hoc argumentation.
Yes,
we're saying okay, Matt, we're saying Matt, no, hang on, Matt. Hang on, Matt. We're not using ad hoc arguments because we're saying we're willing to have, Matt, we're willing to say that we will change our mind if there's new information given that will show us where what we believe is wrong. So that is the definition of it not being ad hoc. Your belief system where you say your belief system where you say I'm going to make everything conform to my already held belief that the Bible is true is the definition of ad hoc argumentation, Matt.
No, actually, I would say I would use the Bible as the standard because the Bible, I would not change the Bible. What I'm saying is if you're using...
Does anybody else want to try to explain to this idiot what ad hoc arguments are?
It seems to me that anytime you're arguing with somebody who is telling you just straight up that in the face of evidence, they are going to completely ignore that evidence, and instead they're going to believe whatever it is that they were believing before in the first place, it almost seems like at that point is when you should stop wasting your time having a conversation on that particular topic.
Wait, everybody got him to admit evolution is real, so he's just wasting our time at this point.
Most people who are making ad hoc arguments aren't admitting, they're not aware that they're doing this, right? So this is something you would point out to somebody and say, well, look, but here's what you did, and then they should turn red and feel ashamed. When you have somebody openly telling you that this is just their worldview and this is the way that they sort of come to the realization of what is true, that this is something they're overtly doing, at that point you're just lost, right? Like there's really not no math that's going to help you.
I don't consider the Bible as moldable like y'all consider evolution is moldable and changeable. I don't have to.
Yeah, Matt, that has no bearing. Matt, that has no bearing. Oh my God. You seriously really don't understand ad hoc argument, Matt.
Actually admits it. He says that will look very different in 20 years.
Matt, so, look, ad hoc arguments.
Let me give you a hypothetical question.
No.
Are you brave enough to
please don't. Oh my gosh.
It's a philosophical question. Have you ever heard of I forget the name of it, but it's called the boat, it's a paradox, in which a person they take an old boat, and then they move the pieces, and replace it, and they that's it. So my question is, when you take all these pieces away from evolution and put another one in its place, will it still look like the same one, or will it look very different?
That's
which pieces?
If it looks different, then you don't have the same theory.
Which pieces?
You understand? So
wait, Matt, are you for evolution?
At what point does the theory of evolution look nothing like the theory of evolution anymore? Because with this boat, it still looked the same. It was just one was a newer version. There was no real change. Here, it would look very different. So my question is, at what point...
The theory of evolution matches reality, right? So as reality exists, evolution matches reality. Reality being the standard and the immutable thing here.
It doesn't match
reality.
Evolution, it's not testable or falsifiable. Like, a lot of people would argue it's unscientific.
Most of those people who would argue it's unscientifical should be dismissed because the word unscientific... Okay, I'm going to stop.
I'm sorry, I'm trolling you, but I do think the theory of evolution, I don't know, I feel like, so evolution itself, it can't be tested, right? We know that. And there is, like, experiments that show that there was an experiment. Wait a minute, let me finish, bro. So there has been an experiment that was done by some German scientists that he tried to manipulate variables to see if he could recreate the theory of evolution. So basically, he was creating adaptations to the environment to see if I think he did it on rats and insects, right? And the theory in itself didn't work because survival of the fittest and all that jazz. These things just died. Does that make sense? And even the ones that did survive just recreated and reproduced the exact same species.
What you're talking about is what you're talking about is not that's actually from 100 years ago when there were two competing theories. I believe it was in addition to Darwinism, I believe it was Lamarckianism, in which case they thought that by making physical changes to animals, you could force those animals to pass those physical changes you made onto their descendants. But that was before DNA was discovered. So they didn't know.
It's very recent. Sorry to interrupt you. It's very recent. I'm going to try and find it.
Okay.
You're talking about genetic memory, I believe, is what the...
Well, no. So, like in the 1800s, there was Darwinism, which was saying that the changes would occur gradually based on environmental conditions, and there was the opposition thinking that they could be imposed. Hang on.
I don't know. I feel like, okay, even if evolution did exist, right? Say if it did exist, why have we been humans for such a long period of time? There's so many changes to our environment. Like, why are we all still human? Does that make sense? And why are these people around? See, you know,
it doesn't happen straight away. Right?
No, but I know it doesn't. Wait a minute, let me finish. So there's still like creatures that were probably around millions and millions and millions of years ago that are still around today. Does that make sense? So really and truly, if we all came from apes,
who do you know that's a million years old?
An ape.
What?
An ape is 1,000,000 years old?
You're just so like fundamentally confused. I mean, modern humans.
I think that's really rude to call me fundamentally confused. I think you are very narrow-minded. I think you're stuck in a box and you think that some man's theory that cannot be proved.
Hello?
Okay, first of all, theories don't get proven. Second of all, the human genome is
Actually, no. Like, if you have
Excuse me.
evidence to back it up.
Excuse me. Hold on a second. Hold on. There is drift in the human genome. In fact, human brains have gotten smaller since caveman times. You can look this up. It's quite interesting. It kind of says, hey, humanity is changing. There is evidence. You just don't see it at the scale that you would otherwise.
But you can see it at scale, though. The humans are getting taller too. We are several inches taller now than we were.
Yeah, smaller brains, taller people. Great combo.
But it's the size of the brain is not directly related to intelligence, though. It is the surface area. That's why if you actually look at a human brain compared to other animals, it's
That's
so
more
much
to do
more
with the
wrinkled.
neocortex. It's not necessarily only surface area. Surface area
That
is
is true.
really a
Yeah.
secondary factor.
Well, yeah,
parameter. It's not the primary
and
driver.
and such. Yes, absolutely. But the smoother the brain, the fewer neurons. That's the same reason that if you
Yeah.
look
So
at,
cavemen had more neurons. So given the same volume, more neurons.
So real quick, as just point of mod. So Nice for Who, I put you down to the audience because you were just interrupting, and it was not a productive conversation. If you got something to say, you want to raise your hand, but I'm going to moderate you, and you're going to let other people respond. And if you go crazy again, I'm going to move you straight back down to the audience. Okay?
So, first of all, I just want to thank my fans and Honest for bringing me back onto stage. Wait, what's your name? Your name's Jeff Trimble. Thank you, Jeff Trimble, for bringing me back onto stage. My point is that are we really going to believe someone like Charles Darwin? Like, bro. I'm not trolling you.
You're trolling.
In fact,
Now you're so trolling. You're so trolling.
I'm just trying to give you the benefit of the doubt. If you're not trolling, you're an utter moron. I think she's just kidding.
anyway,
Yeah, I think she was kidding. Yeah.
Yeah, probably. But just get back to what I was saying. I'm sorry, I had a phone call on my other line. But so there were experiments, completely unethical by today's standards. But so for apes that had the thumb toe, I forget the technical term for that, but to try to induce by full bipedalism by removing that so that the foot looked more like a human foot. But that was back in the 1800s and before they had any concept of how DNA worked, how traits could be passed on. This might even be before Mendel, his work was published. And in fact, his work actually did not get recognized for, God, it was like half a century, maybe a full century after his. We all had to do those pea plant studies in elementary or middle school, learning all that stuff, how
Mendel?
How traits are, yes, exactly, how traits are passed on. But that was all novel stuff back then, and it's not like they had the internet, so one lone monk in a monastery somewhere out in the middle of nowhere, it's not like his work
Did you know
was
that
widely known.
Darwin had Mendel's work, but he couldn't speak German.
Did. Absolutely.
So
yes.
he never knew it. He had it literally in his desk when he died.
Yeah, it actually, God, I forget who it was that Darwin worked with after that rediscovered it. So his Mendel's stuff had been bouncing around for quite a while, but I mean, he was just some friar in a monastery in the middle of nowhere working with pea plants. So I mean, the work was groundbreaking, but it's not like you could publicize yourself very well, especially if you're just some monk somewhere. So that doesn't have anything to do with anything. I just think the history of science is interesting. But so my point is that my original point was that both of those are still, while they're not both Darwinism, they're two different branches. They were still studies and inquiries into evolution. Evolution back then was not nearly the controversial thing it is now. Everyone just accepted that things could change as they want. In fact, taxonomy was invented by a creationist. So that things are nested and descend from ancestors and change over time. That has only become a big controversial deal with the advent of the super evangelical fundamentalism in the West, especially America. In the last 100 years or so. So I mean, this was not that big a deal before. It was just once the rise of the political fundamentalism in America is when it started to become a big thing. I mean, most students don't even learn more than a few weeks of evolution in school.
Yeah, in the 1980s, when Ronald Reagan married the Republican Party to the evangelical.
I think it started in the 60s, though, with, who was that televangelist who was made sure to get himself ingratiated with every president for like 40 years? God, who was that?
Billy Graham. Yes.
He started the whole thing in the 50s or 60s when he was starting up. And it's gotten so much more, just so much more extreme since then, since the decades since. It wasn't, before then, it wasn't a belief that you had to have to call yourself evangelical, that you refused any science that was contrary to a biblical, literalism. You could.
Something that's scary right now is that Christian nationalism is on the rise because of this crazy shit. Lauren Boebert, who's a senator, has actually said in public that Christians should be the ones holding office and making the laws, and that they should be based on Christian biblical principles.
Yes.
They want a theocracy.
That is true. I don't know what anything to do with this.
Very honest, isn't she? I mean, she's honest.
Like creationism in the schools.
Yeah, of course they are. They have been for decades. I mean,
yeah.
The difference is this person is basically like Lauren Boebert is just like she's unapologetic because she does well. That's why she's unapologetic. So she just doesn't feel like she has to hide it because she's convinced that the majority is with her, or at least that there's a very large minority that is with her. I'm not sure she's wrong.
Well,
there's enough idiots that validate her.
It's like prohibition. Prohibition was never favored by the majority of the country, but the minority that favored it was able to, over like 20 years, get themselves so worked up into a frenzy that they could force it on everyone else, and it lasted, like 15 years or something, and it was a disaster for the country. But so that's how even a minority, if once they get fervent enough, can actually change the Constitution to take away your rights.
Well, in this case, it's every time she says something crazy, her poll numbers go up, right? Like, we know that there's enough people in her district.
Yeah,
exactly. In her district, we know that she's already popular enough to get elected.
I don't remember what state that is, but...
Yeah, so,
Well, and then you got the stupid woman from Georgia. What's her... oh, my God. What's the crazy Georgia girl's name?
Oh. Yeah, the one with the Jewish face.
Marjorie Taylor Greene, MT.
Yeah, and she thinks that there's a conspiracy of Jews to start forest fires in California. She said it was Jewish space lasers she believed caused it. those fires from, what, a year ago? Yeah,
Yeah, she's,
look at
in reality,
she
crazy.
said that on the record.
I got a funny one on that. So I do wildland firefighting, and
And they're both evangelical Christians.
when those blows happen, though, we are hearing over the attacks and radios, BLM on site. And a lot of people ran with that, thinking it was Black Lives Matter. Ironically enough, it was the Bureau of Land Management, but I thought that was pretty funny. How people just totally went apeshit over the wrong thing. It's telling, you know.
Do they blame BLM for everything?
Well, they heard over the radios because we have a Bureau of Land Management up here in Oregon, and they took that for BLM, Black Lives Matter, which is funny enough, but it was also dangerous because civilians would go up thinking that's the case, that there's looters trying to loot the burnt over towns, and that makes our job harder because now there's, like, of course, civilians in the fire zone, and that just fucks everything up, you know. We're trying to evacuate everyone. It's just
How do you loot a town that burned to the ground?
well, there's still places that aren't
be
fully burned.
destroyed, right?
Well, there's fire does like amazing things. Sometimes it'll just completely miss a house, right? And everybody had evacuated, and people could go into that house that the fire had not touched. And so there's like cases like that.
But isn't the fire still like in the area at that time?
Oh yeah,
The wind direction change
As long as
and
they can get something, they won't care.
yeah,
I
right.
guess you're right.
Desperados.
Skeptical theist, right? And they do this all the time, right? I mean, every time you hear Alexander Proust say, you know, about libertarian free will, you know, that, the Libertarian Free Act has a sufficient explanation, right? But it just doesn't have a contrastive explanation, and that's not undermining the PSR. Right, that's what's going on, right? It's just bizarre perversion, right?
Oh, no, I agree with all that. Yeah, no, I agree. But I think like natural theology is still a degenerate research program because while adding all these activities, they don't generate novel predictions. But I'm not sure that the improvement to neoclassical theories over the years hasn't, like, by improving it, made like newer predictions. Which is
well, to the extent that I've looked into it, it's a mess.
Yeah, I just have a hard time thinking that a field. I mean, like, I don't think natural theology is like taken seriously at all. It's like a handful of like Christians who like engage in like mental masturbation. But I think like with neoclassical economics, it's like a serious. It's taken to be a serious field. And there's like all of these constant empirical gatherings of data and studies.
I mean, look at something like political science. I mean, like, I think there are a lot of fields like this. Political science is one. Neoclassical economics is another. Evolutionary psychology is another. They're just sort of pseudo fields.
So you think neoclassical, you think the auxiliaries over the years added to neoclassical theories haven't been generated any?
It's a complicated situation what's happened in neoclassical economics. So they, for close to 100 years, they tried to develop a theory that was a macroeconomic theory that could sort of explain the prices of all productive inputs and all goods bought and sold in an economy. And in the 60s, Sraffa proved that there couldn't be a coherent marginalist theory of production. And what that meant was that they had to actually give up on the idea of grand theory in economics and construct piecemeal models that often contradicted each other. So there isn't actually like a kind of unified neoclassical theory at all. There are some sort of there are some sort of like broader theoretical disputes among different schools, but with respect to actual models, they're kind of like piecemeal models that can contradict each other. But one person who I think has written on this, I haven't gotten around to reading his book, is Alexander Rosenberg. He wrote a book, very substantial book on neoclassical economics, where he, I think, basically tries to subject it to this kind of scrutiny, I don't know if he actually uses like a Lakatoshian type of framework exactly, but something like that,
I think Lakatos, in his, what's it called, methodology, I don't know, like his,
I think I lost Venus. Oh, we got a call. We had to leave, okay. One of Lakatos's disciples did have a famous dispute with Milton Friedman, where he argued that neoclassical economics was a degenerating research program.
well, I'm saying I think Lakatos himself gave neoclassical as an example.
Oh, that's interesting.
But I think he gave Marxism as well. So.
Yeah, he gave Marxism, and interestingly, Feyerabend disagreed with him about that. Like he sort of attacked Lakatos's claim, very interestingly. But I do think that Lakatos has been refuted on that point. Like people like Mosley, that's probably the best example of somebody who tried to show that, contra what Lakatos himself thought, that it's actually on Lakatosian grounds that you can show that the labor theory of value is superior to its rivals, because it actually is, it does meet the criteria of a progressive research program. And I think Alex Kalinikos made a similar argument, and maybe also this other economist, Marxist economist, George Kataforis. So yeah, I think there's a bunch of people who sort of have like refuted Lakatos on that point, because I don't think he knew that much about, even though he was an ex-Marxist, I don't think he actually knew that much about Marxist economics. So he kind of like didn't really understand. He wasn't really in a position to make that judgment.
Yeah, and I agree with that, but I think the same could be said about, what he said about the neoclassical. That's why I was asking, shouldn't the empirical stuff sort of aside of a progressive research program as opposed to degenerating stuff?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's, it's not really an argument I would be willing to have at this point, but I'm just saying, to the extent that I've looked into it, that's the way it seems to me. But there's a lot of like serious people who've made that argument. People like Alexander Rosenberg. I think his book is probably one of the most substantial. But I haven't gotten around to reading that one. But I've read Yanis Varoufakis' book on it, and I found what he had to say convincing. The stuff that Michael Roberts has been saying for several years now, in his writings on it, I think bolster that case. People like E.K. Hunt in his book History of Economic Thought, I think he sort of shows that neoclassical economics is like basically just kind of a shambles. But I wouldn't engage in a debate on that question at the moment. I'd have to do like more reading. I'm not even sure it'd be worth it even if I did the reading, unless I could sort of like focus on purely conceptual questions. But a lot of people who aren't like leftists have come to that conclusion themselves. Like there's like all these best-selling books that come out about, and probably some of them are relatively serious books about, sort of like why there isn't consensus in the field, why they weren't able to predict certain things, and why economists can't agree on what, how to solve the current crisis, that kind of stuff. And they actually will go into sort of like, somebody like Stiglitz has that view, I think, who's a Nobel Prize winning economist, right? He's not a Marxist, right? He just thinks, it's become a meme. Economics has become a meme.
Do you think Nobel Prizes in economics mean anything, Jack?
I'm just saying it shows sort of like how the economics profession itself, right, how he's viewed by the economics profession itself.
Right.
Right. That's all that I meant by that.
No, I was actually just genuinely asking, like if you thought they had any merit particularly.
One thing that's interesting is that even though people like Milton Friedman and who was it, Hayek or Mises or both, even though like people like that won the prize for years, right? That it's kind of interesting that Amartya Sen and Eleanor Ostrom have like won. On the one hand, they're awarding it to people like Henry Kissinger, right? Which just makes the whole thing into a joke, right? But then they want to also award it to people like Albert Schweitzer, right? And it's kind of like, how are these people, like, you might want to attack Schweitzer, right? Like, as a Marxist, you might say, well, Schweitzer is just somebody who's basically just a charity, right? He's just the overseer of a charity, right? And why would a Marxist be impressed by charity? Right? That charity is just one mechanism that the ruling class sort of employs to blunt the sheer starkness of inequality, right? But even if you do sort of want to attack Schweitzer on that basis, he's clearly like miles away from somebody like Kissinger.
He's not a mass murderer.
Yeah, it's just like, so they sort of oscillate between those sort of two types. It's always within those two rubrics, though, right? I mean, I'm not an expert on the history of the prize, so maybe we could find a counterexample. It seems to me you could like pretty much line it up. It's going to be one or the other.
I think Mandela is a more interesting one.
Well, Mandela is probably one of the only people who's ever, if the Nobel Prize were something that a genuinely progressive figure could ever deserve, Mandela must be probably the only person that's ever won it, right?
That's right, exactly.
I mean, we'd have to go through the list. Maybe there's somebody else, but that I'm not thinking of. But
Desmond Tutu.
Well, Desmond Tutu is an interesting case. I don't know what the party's view on Tutu is. I mean, he is a cleric, but he does seem to have been a pillar of the. I think he was a pillar of the ANC, right? Am I wrong about that?
I don't know.
I gathered that he was a pillar of the ANC, so maybe. I don't know. We'd have to look into it. We should ask David. because I haven't been reading the Militant since the apartheid. Well, when did I start reading the Militant? Regularly, pretty much in the early 2000s. So yeah, I wasn't reading him when Tutu first entered international consciousness. So there was quite a long time that Tutu was a major figure in South African politics where I wasn't reading the Militant. So I don't know what their take on him is. I vaguely recall thinking that to the extent that he has been mentioned, they haven't attacked him, which seems like a sign that he might be a progressive figure, but even from their point of view. But it's a good question because clerics don't usually get that kind of treatment. I mean, even Gandhi, right? In fact, I'm not even sure I fully understand. I think Manny has been sort of pressing this point, right? Is what's really the difference between Gandhi and Mandela? I suspect that well, to the extent that I've looked into it, I think probably there is a difference in terms of like who was progressive and who was not. But yeah, I think it's probably a case that really needs to be like clearly laid out. And I haven't seen where it has been laid out that well. I mean, I guess a little bit. Like I think if you read Hitchens' essay on Gandhi, it's probably like a good sort of overview of some of the reasons why you would think that he was not somebody who should be favorably compared with somebody like Mandela.
Did the Militant never write anything on Gandhi?
No, they did, but you have to go back to the...
Right.
You have to go back to the coverage in the 30s and 40s, and it's probably not that easy to wade through all that. But yeah, if you go to the Militant Index and look up Gandhi, there are interesting articles where they denounce Gandhi and the Congress Party for sort of obstructing the class struggle. There are interesting articles on that. But obviously, somebody like Manny should be the one to do it.
I hear you on that. So, translation that uses the majority text, I don't like. I am not King James only, but I'm majority text only. So any translation that uses the majority text, I don't like. I just don't like the manuscripts from Alexandria, Egypt, because I think they're corrupt. I hear you on that. Yeah. So let's stick with this. So we'll start in verse 11 and kind of go down here. So whereas angels, which are greater in power and might, bring not railing accusations against them before the Lord, being merry about all sorts of other blasphemies, and it's these godless, hater, disgusting reprobates that do this. And it's actually more numerous than you think it is. It's not like they're just in they're hiding in their little dungeon somewhere, and they come out once in a while. And again, if it ain't, then I'll just have to do some shit on the fly. And I figured we could check a little bit of this out. What kind of Christian is this dude? Does he believe in OSAS? Does he believe that atheists could have been Christians in their past? Hopefully we'll get to that part. I think we should get to that part. I got roughly an hour and a half. If I stop running my fucking mouth and we get to it, we'll probably get through all of it. So, I might have given myself too much time. I might not have given myself enough time. Who knows? I just got home, so it wasn't like I was trying to give myself any kind of time. Got home and I'm bored. So we're just going to do it. We're going to jump right in. We're going to meet Kevin. This is the guy that I'm talking to tonight at 8 o'clock. It'll be part of this stream. So if you get bored with this little response and you want to come back for the conversation, shouldn't have to wait for another stream, right? So everything should happen all in the same stream. We'll see how it goes. Let's meet Kevin. Kevin, there he is. Good to see you, Kevin. Hey, Tom. Yeah, so I see Jamie's in here poisoning the well, trying to say 2 Peter 2 is talking about people who are born again. No, that verse, it's talking about false prophets. It's starting in verse 1. I'm gonna show you. What I thought. That's what I did. I held to that. I'll show you. Yeah. Because we have other passages in the Bible, like John 10, that make it clear that God's sheep can never perish, and then that same chapter says, "My sheep will not follow the voice of a stranger." So these category of people that are led astray by these false prophets, right, are obviously in contrast to John 10, where they're following the voice of strangers. False prophets would be the voice of a stranger. Therefore, the people led away by the false prophets were never born again. It's not.
Yeah. So far, and to be fair, I didn't stream yesterday, so that's how that happened. Let's hope it doesn't happen today. It probably would never happen if I just put OBS on, like the whole screen, but I don't have it in this little window. Because I like seeing the side chat from the actual stream more than I like seeing the side chat in OBS. Although, honestly, I don't, if I don't have other things, I don't really need to do that. But it's how I do it. It's what I'm used to. I'm very OCD, so it'd be hard for me to break that habit.
That's what I hold. That's what I argue.
Yeah, but it ends up speaking of the people that are led astray by them.
If there are false prophets among the people, even as there will be false teachers among you, who will bring in damnable heresies like universalism, even denying the Lord that bought them. Okay? Many shall follow them in their ways of reason.
Wait, if the Lord bought them, how could they?
Oh, you spoiled it, Boothador. I know that only because I listened to this earlier, and he should get into all of it. But yeah, you're right. Kevin is OSAS, but that doesn't mean like I'm cool, right? Like I was saved as a Christian, right? So just because I'm an atheist, because I was saved before, once saved, always saved. No, that means that if I had been truly saved, I would have never been able to not believe in the Christian God. Therefore, I could have never been saved, which is probably all of their positions, right? It's so stupid to me, I don't really give them much time to respond.
Bring upon swift destruction if they've been bought.
Because who did Jesus purchase? Humanity. He paid for the sins of the world on the cross. It only applies to them who believe. So that's what it means. There's another verse in the Bible also that talks about Jesus bought humanity. That's what it's saying here. It's not. This is not an individual basis. This is talking about Jesus purchased the human. I think it's Colossians.
Yeah, but Kevin, what about the part that they've escaped the pollution of the world?
Yeah, I'll get there.
Okay.
And through covetousness they shall with a few words make merchandise of you, whose judgment now of a long time came to get down to the word of Jacob. For if God spared not the angels of sin, but cast them down to hell, and delivered them to the chains of darkness to be reserved to judgment, and spared not the old world, but saved Noah and the 8 people. A creature of righteousness bringing the flood upon the world and the ungodly. Okay, he destroys the wicked, he kills them. Everlasting fire. And that's another point I want to make for people that hold to annihilationism. Why would the lake of fire be eternal, but the inhabitants in there cease to exist? That doesn't make sense. Why wouldn't it be just a temporary fire? Why does it have to be eternal? Well, turning the cities of.
All right, so Kevin seems to be the type of Christian that thinks that God is going to torture you for eternity. Like you are going to feel the most pain that is possible for you to feel, and you're going to feel that pain for eternity. And not only does he believe that, but he thinks if you think otherwise, you're not a Christian, you're not saved, or whatever. You're stupid. I'm gonna have to remember to ask him after we.
So that's the point.
You're really burying the lead, John. You didn't start with saying, "Look, I don't think theology has anything to do with it," and then people get upset with you because you seem roundabout, okay, and elliptical.
He doesn't even know how to fly, land the plane.
Didn't give me an opportunity.
John, let me convince you. It's not theological, it's political.
No,
John, what's the difference between?
Amazing. That's not a true dichotomy. If it's not
I'm not saying it
theological, it's then political. That's ridiculous.
No, I didn't say it was.
You didn't say it was a dichotomy, you fucking.
I didn't say it was. But okay, John, you cannot deny though that those two things go together in one party in America, right?
I deny it.
You deny that the fundamental Christians are almost all Republican, and that the Republican Party
correlation does not imply causation, sir.
Can I finish? I didn't say causation, but
that's what you're saying, sir. You said because.
So no. Can I finish?
John, let him finish.
Sir. So
calm down. We're gonna need to calm down.
Unbelievable.
Stop.
Ma'am, this is a Wendy's. Unbelievable.
Don't tase me, bro. Don't tase me.
So you cannot deny that fundamentalists are almost all the fundamentalist Christians in America are almost all Republican, and almost all Republicans are also climate change deniers or climate mitigation deniers. Even if they admit to climate change, they don't want to do much about it. Or don't think that much should be done.
That's a generalization.
It has nothing to do with causation.
Is irrelevant. Basically, that's like saying, we know that most black people commit crimes, and that's just like that.
No, most black people don't.
John, you're a fucking idiot.
Wait, most black people don't.
John, you said most black people commit crimes? Where are you getting that?
No. Most of the crimes per capita are committed by black people. That's
not even true, you fucking moron.
Bullshit. That's not true, John.
I can educate you.
It's disingenuous
John,
to assign
every white person I know has smoked weed. That's a crime.
No, that's like saying that they created a law called unemployment, and then during the time when they freed a bunch of slaves,
African Americans account for 55.9% of all real. Thank you, Io. Thank you very much.
African American so I can correct John because he's an idiot. John, that's bullshit. White people commit the most crimes both per capita and in gross number in the country.
Every white person I know.
Per capita, that's false, sir.
No, it's not.
Do you even understand what capita represents?
No, it's not. FBI table 43 says it's not. That's incorrect. Right? There's only one category where black people outpace anybody.
You don't understand. John doesn't want that to be true. John would rather that not be true, so he's not going to believe it. You're just stating something he doesn't like, so now he's going to say he's skeptical.
He's trying to correlate some sort of political affiliation with
we don't need to go on to his red herring. Hang on, shut up, John. We don't need to take your red herring.
That's what he's trying to do.
The topic
and so what I'm trying to say is I gave an analogy, sir, about black people and how that's as ridiculous as that.
The red herring.
But from that, you try to bring some facts, sir. That's simply not true. African Americans only represent 13% of the country. And per capita, once again, per capita, they have a higher crime.
So
I don't care. So what was the Republican equivalent of the Green New Deal?
Fucking idiot.
What was the Republican equivalent of the Green New Deal? The Republicans were annoyed by the one proposed, but what was the Republican version?
So you guys are talking about how many people who are Christian, many people who are Christian do not believe in climate change. Okay, and I guess maybe that is just a coincidence. Maybe there is no theological justification for it.
Yeah.
There are many things that these Christian people have in common with one another.
Thank you, Jason.
There's no particular reason to believe it's due to theology.
Yeah. Dr. Cope, the statistic you presented, I know I'm familiar with it, table 43. Per capita, and I hate to say it, John is right on per capita because
this is off topic.
I know. I'm just saying.
This is off topic. You need to get on topic, buddy.
Wait. Listen. Wait.
No, shut up, buddy.
Stop interrupting.
Red herring.
1 second.
Shut up.
Listen. There's socioeconomic conditions that
just not relevant. We're talking about climate change.
John's statistic is just wrong.
It's not relevant.
You're using it as an example. It's a red herring. It's just.
No, it's not a red herring when that was the subject. It's not a red herring when that was the subject.
Using it as an example, and we can move back to the topic at hand.
Right. And in terms of why conservative people are skeptical about climate change, it's in part because people dramatically overstate it, all right? I have had conversations with people who are convinced that in 10 years, we are all going to be living in a desert and all this kind of stuff. Intelligent people. I think most projections will tell you that, the temperature might rise 5 degrees centigrade in 100 years. Okay? Those are reasonable projections. But there are a lot of alarmists, all right? I think, again, you have to say, well, who is going to have a reasonable perspective about this? Conservatives or liberals? And I think the real answer is people in reinsurance. People in reinsurance are going to want to know how much they have to pay out in 20 years, 30 years, how big their fund has to be in 50 years, 100 years. Okay? And that's the only way you're going to get a reasonable perspective on this.
And the
military, sure. And you're not going to get it from very green people. You're not going to get it from very religious people, all right, who are just green people are a kind of very religious person, okay? And if we're asking why are people who don't really have skin in the game, why do they not have a reasonable perspective? Well, they don't need to have one, okay? That's why they don't have one.
So, John, what would convince you? We haven't asked. You've got to answer that, John. What would convince you?
Why do we got to convince John? Why?
Because I want to see him as a stereotypical idiot that needs to be convinced. Right? He's demonstrably a standard person that doesn't believe in it.
Why do you want your fellow countrymen to be a stereotypical idiot? Why do you want that?
He is I don't want that. He is a stereotypical idiot that doesn't believe in climate change. So I want to know what would convince him so we can work towards figuring out what people would be.
Wait, John, you don't believe in climate change?
Of course I do. He said he does. He just
doesn't believe it's man-made.
He does.
Man-made climate change.
He thinks that
John,
if it's man-made or not.
John, if it's not man-made, what is it perpetuated by?
What was that? It's underdetermined.
It's underdetermined.
Underdetermined.
Wait, did you say underdetermined or indetermined?
Underdetermined.
What?
Yeah. Underdetermined means that the data fits more than one hypothesis.
No, I know, but that doesn't make sense in this context.
John, what's the other hypothesis the data fits?
Yeah, exactly. What's the other hypothesis?
It could be it could be due to the sun.
Yeah, that's what you said earlier.
What? How does the data fit with that hypothesis, John?
So, John, in either case, isn't doing solar panels and stuff better?
Well, no, I want him to answer this question. John, how does the data fit with the sun hypothesis?
Yeah, I know quite a bit about green energy, Rapskull. I used to actually...
John, how does the data fit with the sun hypothesis?
How does it? I mean, listen, it's not a matter...
Answer.
It's not a matter... Well, no, let me tell you this, okay? It's not a matter of man-made or not, right? I am skeptical that it is man-made. I genuinely am. I have learned a little bit about the subject, and just because that's a consensus of scientists, and even if it's overwhelming, does not necessarily
represent... Here's a better question, John. What do you think a solution could be? What do you think a solution could be to curtail it if it wasn't man-made, but we had options to do so?
We can't.
Well, that's assuming that it's problematic.
I'm just asking, if we could have a solution to it, what do you think one of them could be?
Solution implies a problem.
Well, just go with it. Go with the hypothetical.
That's why I said his view was that it's real, just not that you should do anything about it.
That's why I asked what he
said that either.
You're saying it's good. God will do it. It's good. We're good to go into the World Series.
John, do you provisionally hold that climate change by man is supported by the science? Because you said it wasn't necessarily true.
Let me put it by a political standpoint, right? If it is the case that the United States is going to do all the heavy lifting, while other countries like China and Russia are building coal plants like there's no tomorrow, right? And the Persian Gulf is extracting oil, right, and profiting. Russia as well, and all of these countries.
Well, Canada is also opening up coal plants.
Yeah.
It's funny that you think U.S. is doing the heavy lifting here. That's kind
Let him conclude.
Look at the data. As far as carbon emission reduction, the United States.
What's the point? If we do the heavy lifting, then what?
By far, leaps and bounds past other countries in reducing carbon emissions. By far.
So what do you think of this, John?
Price tag aside, what would be a solution?
Solution to what? Solution to what?
I mean,
I told you, the hypothetical that the climate is changing. The hypothetical that the climate is changing.
Dominic, nuclear power would be a solution. And there are so many.
I like nuclear power.
There are so many there are so many green nutballs opposed to nuclear power. And you know who's not opposed to nuclear power? People like John. Conservatives are not opposed to nuclear power. Why don't we stop breaking the sky over the coals? Why don't we stop breaking the sky over the coals and ask why the people who are so green and who are so concerned about the environment are not going after the people in their own coalition who don't support nuclear power?
So they should be, but the Republicans could have presented a case of, look, we're going to turn coal miners into uranium miners, so the mining operations stay there. We're going to move.
Well, you can't actually. I don't think you can actually do that respectfully, Rapscuttle. But what we cannot do is have the Green Party or the Green people be so opposed to nuclear power and expect to get anywhere. Okay.
Who's this guy white knighting for John? Is anyone in here against nuclear? Can you actually argue against the people in here?
No, but Jason, I don't think people are aware.
I agree. Look, I'm green, and I agree. Solar power. Hey, I agree.
Yeah, solar power, wind power doesn't even cut it.
Hang on.
It's not going to be sufficient at all. Not even close.
The point was to give an example, John. The point was to get. God damn it! Look, the point was I wanted to hear your solution because I don't think you really have given it thought even to what a solution could be. That's like other people answered it for you.
Of course I have.
But I just wanted
to hear it. The solution is market-based, right? When you're trying to socially engineer companies like Solyndra or whatever, all I'm saying is this, okay? I don't know if you guys realize
answer me. Is it a willful ignorance? You just admitted ignorance.
You guys are willfully ignorant that solar power and windmills.
Has anybody here actually specifically advocated for either of those, though? I haven't heard anybody specifically advocate for those, John.
Oh my God, this guy's unstoppable. John,
if that's not the solution, what alternatives do you have? You have nuclear.
Can we add some order to the room and stop the ad hominem?
Exactly. You guys are so.
No. We need to do more ad hominem. So the entertainment.
Shut up, John. Do you apply your skepticism to your own belief? No ad hominem. Do you apply skepticism to your own belief of
Calvinism has nothing to do with anything.
Just asking if you apply skepticism to your own religious dogma.
We should be controlled with natural laws.
Just asking you.
By the way, those are not ad hominems, they're just insults. They're not ad hominems because we're not saying because he believes in a stupid thing, he's stupid. We're just insulting him.
Maybe talking going to start muting.
Okay, thankful for the distinction.
I don't know if
there's a distinction without a distinction.
Do you guys even know what's in the New Green Deal and things like that? Do you guys even study the literature politically of what they're proposing? This is utterly ridiculous. We have 137% debt to GDP. You want to add, 17 more trillion here, 5 more trillion there? You like it's peanuts? You don't know what
douchebag. Come on, he's giving examples of bullshit, biased political opinion. You do not need to sit here and let him just bloviate for that crap.
Yeah, I don't know where the idea of the government spending money on fruitful infrastructure is somehow
why can't we focus on natural laws? Because natural laws.
What is a natural law? Like laws of physics?
Huh?
Like laws of physics?
No, he's talking about natural law. Like
yeah, I'm asking him what he means by that. Are you talking about laws of physics?
No, I'm not talking about physics.
What do you mean by natural law? What do you mean by
laws
that?
As it concerns everything that is in the world that's controlled.
Yeah, those are laws of physics.
Example,
those are laws of physics, like the law of gravity and like electromagnetism and stuff like that. So you were talking about laws of physics. Because there's two different ways somebody can understand natural law. You can understand it in terms of like the laws of nature, the laws of physics, the operational laws of nature. Or you can understand it in like this esoteric religious sense that's never really been well defined.
Laws of nature. And I'm wondering, why are we controlled about climate change when the laws of nature, we may have had climate change thousands of years ago, even at the beginning of man's...
because we're talking about
because we went around...
man's time on Earth did not start thousands of years ago.
The consequences. Now we stand to suffer and perish due to the consequences, so we should do something about it. Simple as that.
Yeah, we're discussing anthropogenic
Yeah, I don't believe that
climate change. The fact that the usage of fossil fuels by human beings over the last roughly 150 years has contributed significantly to increases in the temperature in Earth's climate, in Earth's atmosphere, which is causing effects on our planet. Why is it a problem? Because it's causing effects that are going to make it significantly more difficult for us to survive and thrive on the planet. And not just us, but many other species as well.
This planet is heated and cooled and heated throughout its history.
Not this rapidly and not in these ways, so that's not exactly true.
I got a question for John. John, what percentage of species on the planet have gone extinct?
About 99%.
Right. And what was one of the largest and biggest killers of species on the planet? It was a singular...
Yeah, like a meteor.
No, I'm not talking about the Yucatan accident. I'm talking about an ice age.
You're talking about the global freeze.
Ice ages, repeated ice ages, repeated climate change as a result of volcanic activity. Climate change is the single biggest killer of species on this planet, right? So when you say something as stupid as the Earth is heated and cooled thousands of times, you sound stupid because what you fail to realize is that heating and cooling has resulted in the killing of hundreds of millions of species of animal, and your Earth might be next off the list.
So, John, the main problem is that humans live all over the surface of the Earth. If you care about other people, then you have to care about hundreds of millions that are gonna be climate changed out of existence. It's not that everyone is going to have a problem. There'll be still humans surviving, but everyone who's not lucky enough to be born in a fortunate area is going to be shit out of luck. And if you care about humans, then that's why it's a problem.
Yeah, I mean, care about humans to the extent of what? Every time you build a home and you clear out trees and the rainforest and things like that, you're killing other animals, right? And so even the thriving of any species, whether it be wolves, whether it be antelope, whether it be lions, whatever, is causing an imbalance in the environment. And so
John,
you just want more humans? Is that
we're not antelopes. We're not wolves. We're humans. You know what? It's perfectly. Yeah. It's normal to care about humans more than others.
Do you know what speciesism represents?
There's nothing unusual.
Do you know what speciesism represents?
Absolutely.
Yeah, but John, the actions of humans with respect to the changes in our climate threaten the vast majority of species that live on the surface.
Could y'all stop interfering with evolution?
I have no problem saying that I am a speciesist, that I think humans take priority.
He accused us of speciesism when we were worried about the climate change. That is just...
I think that's fine. I care about other species, but if I have to choose between a human or an antelope surviving, guess which,
What would you choose, a human surviving or a bee? It's just a level of desperation, like literally clutching at straws.
Or an ant, there's more ants.
No, like for example, locally, like we have a bunch of sheep, right? The wolves are attacking the sheep to the point where the balance is being decimated. So they get on helicopters and just start shooting wolves to balance out the environment, right? And as far as human beings, they're simply like that island. They're overpopulating to where there's an imbalance.
John,
and,
please stop.
And you guys,
please stop.
And
please
surely
stop.
you guys understand that's what's going on with you.
Yeah, the
Earth isn't actually overpopulated.
Just co-humans, John.
Well, the funny thing is, we're not
sounds like you're okay with
overpopulated.
that.
We could fit probably another few billion people on the planet comfortably, even with the productive forces under which we currently live. Well,
Right
the
now,
problem isn't our population. The problem is how we distribute resources. We produce globally enough food to feed 10 billion people. There's only 8 billion people on the planet, though.
Correct. No, we don't.
You guys realize how many species become extinct simply because, do you know how many species become extinct just because simply build a wall or a fence or build a home?
Practically
or
none.
clear out some land?
Practically none. If I put up a fence in my backyard, John, I'm not going to make any fucking species go extinct. So what are you even talking about?
On what scale do you imagine the Earth? No, seriously, John, on what scale do you imagine the Earth? A fence can make a species extinct. One fence, one wall.
So, Dr. Copeland, I would like to make two comments. One is I sent you I'm at the gym right now. If the audio is too bad, please let me know. I will go on mute. One is I send in back channel to you an IPCC report from the United Nations called Code Red. That is a summary of the most current kind of assessment of the environmental impact and the damages. By the way, the report itself has been sanitized not to cause a panic among the societies and cultures because the situation is dire. That's number one. If you don't mind, I would like you to pin it in the room if it's appropriate. This is the Dr. Copeland. And no motion website. Well, if you just let me land, then I'll consideration. Just be quiet for now. Then the comments that the two individuals were making, I think one is named John and another one, in terms of this shows complete lack of understanding of the interconnectivity of the entire biosphere. Everything that we do is connected to something else. Everything that happens to Meet, you want to go on mute because you've got your mic on. So the interconnectivity of things are being ignored from this perspective that the Earth could accommodate 10, maybe 15 billion people. But this is just kind of a pretty narrow way of thinking of it. We have to take other things, the entire biosphere, most of it actually, into account to account for interdependability of the things. For example, bees and other species that make this biosphere kind of the way it is, we have to make sure that it is stable and sustainable.
Exactly, Ali.
Yeah, so we cannot be just thinking about us humans, existing, because that may last for a short time, then we go away. I have a third comment, which is regarding to the religious kind of perspective on this topic. The religious has a lot to say about how the religious people, including perhaps some that is on the stage now, I can see who they are. If you just read the Genesis, it's very clear that God has given. I am not going to, by the way, I'm not a religious individual. But God has given.
This audio is terrible.
Okay, then I'll just go on mute. Thank you for letting me know.
I was wondering if he was going to say that Genesis had it all wrapped up thousands of years ago.
Well, if I'm audible and I'm not causing any difficulty, I would like to say a couple more things. If not, I'll just go on mute.
It's a little
I'm
better
at the gym. Okay, good. So the last comment that I wanted to make is something to do with the Genesis itself, for a couple of reasons. One is, of course, if you look at the reason I'm saying is when people in the conspiracy kind of bucket, when people who are anti-vaxxers, climate deniers, they are misogynists, they have, a huge kind of concern about, actually saying that, climate change is a hoax. These all kind of have deep religious underpinning, not totally, but substantially. Again, if you look at the Genesis, man has given dominion over the earth, that means the entire biosphere, to do what a man wishes to do with the earth. That's number one. And number two, the evolution, for example, the evolution deniers are the same people who are also the anti-vaxxer deniers, the flat earthers, and the rest of it. So if you accept the evolution, by definition, you have to put away this silly concept of the creation of man within the Genesis, if you take that literally. So the stuff has a hugely religious kind of underpinning in here. If one would say this is not actually the case, again, I'm not saying totally, substantially, then I think we're not really tackling the problem of the climate change, the anti-vaxxer, flat earth, misogyny, and those types of kind of issues, which are huge issues. They have to be addressed from the religious way of thinking. And I don't have to tell you in here that the same way of thinking, which is people who are the Supreme Court justices who are highly conservative in terms of the issue that I just mentioned, and deeply religious. They end up making the rulings that we've seen just now, the anti-abortion, the human rights, Miranda kind of overturning, and the rest of it. So religion has a lot to say about how we behave and how we impact the environment, our societal concerns. Anyway, I just land at this. I made it really brief because I know the sound here, my audio is not too good.
That's on me, I guess, but in slow motion as well, it's kind of like, really, like, you have the chance to keep him up, and, wow, his entire body is,
We
can't hear what you're saying, Mead.
Oh, I didn't realize he was talking to us.
He's not kind of a paraplegic state.
I just want to say that I wonder, why did the sun start hitting the earth exactly when we started emitting carbon? That's interesting.
What? It's like the question.
He was poking fun at what John said. John was saying about how, well, the sun, it could be causing this. And so I think what Zahir was like playing at facetiously was, oh, well, I didn't realize the sun only started hitting the planet, once the climate started changing.
Sorry,
I think it was supposed to be a joke.
I missed the tongue-in-cheekness of the comment. Sorry, I was like, what? Yeah, sorry.
I think the energy companies made the sun flares increase so that we have to use more electricity for our air conditioners. They want more oil power plants.
Yeah, they have a web service call. They can hit a button and make a web service call to increase the solar.
Well, I mean, if you can have Jewish space lasers to start forest fires, you can have Illuminati space lasers make solar flares.
Right. Wait, I have just one question. Are these Jewish space lasers mounted on the Italian vote-changing satellites?
No, they're Venezuelan.
That's ridiculous. Man. Yeah, no. Like they've been
Ukrainian.
Like, obviously, each of these conspiracies is separate, and because they don't trust each other. But they all have very
that's what they want you to think.
Objectives. Right, I get it. I was actually being tongue-in-cheek as I spoke right now because I was being sarcastic because obviously that was a stupid question. Oh God, we're like 3 levels, and I was actually being sarcastic the entire time. Just want to be clear.
Oh, I hope that was obvious. At least it's better than text. You can never be sure there.
Well, I personally can't wait to listen to the replays of the early part of this room because I assume it was hilarious. I'm sorry I missed the first little bit. Yeah, I like room topics like this. Basically, a tongue-in-cheek topic that gets people coming in and say stuff that are, objectionable, and then spur conversation. I like rooms like this, so I'll definitely listen to the replay. I appreciate it.
I did want to talk just very briefly about evolution. I mean, I'm a theist. I do accept evolution. I understand there's a lot of people in this country that do not accept it. But what I say is, like, so what?
So what? Which part?
Yeah. So
what if there's a group of people that don't accept the veracity of biological evolution? I mean, there's a few people here in the country that don't believe a God exists. I would say, so what is that?
So hang on, let me explain it to you. Because the ones who most ardently disbelieve it are often in control of through various ways, getting school textbooks written, especially in the South. In Texas, because Texas is so large, their textbooks are actually used by half of the states in the country. So when they get laws passed forcing creationism into science books, it affects the entire country.
Well, I'll tell you what, we have 535 members in Congress. There are 0 atheists. So what?
There are not 0.
Not true. There are.
Yeah.
That is true. If you're talking about like Kirsten Sinema or Bernie Sanders, they're not atheists. Just let you know.
Are you saying, are there any explicitly about humanists, like with humanists?
Yes, I should have said open atheists. That's correct, Daniel.
What about humanists? Like, because I know there are humanists, which is synonymous with I don't believe in religion, right? Right?
Yeah. In any case, there are 0 open atheists in Congress.
Well, no. What did that comment with atheists in Congress have to do with anything that was being spoken about beforehand?
Because he was talking about legislation, and we all understand if we know
state legislation.
State legislation is a state issue. If you don't live in Texas, so what?
Isn't like Adam Kersinger an open humanist?
I don't know, but John, I explained why it matters. Because the Texas state, their public education.
Yeah, I'm aware of it.
Yeah, so his point was about education. His point was about education.
It's a state issue. I'm not talking about federal. There are federal issues, but I wasn't talking about any of those. I'm talking about how the local group, but just a few make a difference to, so just a handful of a few hundred people can affect 300-some million.
Listen, if you don't like, if you belong to a certain state that gets their books from Texas, and you don't like the books that come from Texas, right? My point, yes, I do understand that, but my point is, if you don't like it, you belong to the school board. I mean, there are ways for you to be active in things you care about.
John, sure. I'm gonna interrupt you right now and just try to talk to you briefly about, like, I live in the state of Washington. The state of Washington, much like many other states, takes the basic recommendations of the Texas School Board, and then my state is lucky enough to try to modify those, but you only get limited modifications because the publishers of the school books basically are highly motivated to produce a single version of their book, right? So like when Texas makes a decision, which is the point that's being hammered on here, to say you can't talk about like how America wasn't founded as a Christian nation, you can talk about how it was founded on a differentiation from the English form of religion and the English kings imposed form of religion. Now you can talk about that, but not that like America was founded as a Christian nation, because it wasn't. And like there are pushes against stuff like that I hear being brought up here, and it feels like
they also force the removal of any parts of antebellum history that they don't like, that are especially bad.
Any parts of the Civil War that they don't agree with, they demand that it be free.
well, I can have a real conversation for one thing.
I don't understand what you're saying.
You don't understand what I mean by a real conversation? I just mean like...
I mean, this is the kind of thing that I think Phyllis is rightly skeptical of, that if you actually talk to somebody who's not in the working class, who's a Trump supporter, that...
I've spoken to people like this. I've spoken to ones that are American, too. Like, the company that I work for has an American HQ. I've spoken to conservatives that are American, that are Republicans, that think Trump is a disgrace, you know.
I think
one of the things that I think is like a key difference is that they seem to actually care what the truth is. They don't seem like crazed ideologues, you know. Like I can refute what they're saying, and sorry,
that was their survivor is just so off base from what I've experienced.
You think Trump supporters care what the truth is? Did he really just say that, or did he say something else?
He's saying more than liberals.
Well, that's fucking bullshit.
That's good. I want to see this.
Let's get Johnny up here, the real one. He'll tell you all about his lockdown conspiracy theories and how Trump is like a great leader. See what a fun fucking time you're
having. That's kind of a stupid response, because
you should have a great
has
conversation.
A very healthy degree of conspiracy theorists. That's not really very.
What do you think Trump supporters are, if not conspiracy theorists?
Well, they can be non-conspiracy.
Most of them are conspiracy theorists. I don't think you've met very many American ones. Maybe you've met British ones, which is just LARPing anyway.
Okay, I don't find this.
No, I just think it's really weird that you think you'd have such a great conversation with them. They're thick as fuck. What do you mean you'd have a great conversation with them?
John Lee
They're either violently racist or violently ignorant, or both.
John Lee was in the other room, and he was talking about climate change, and I actually really try to think about what motivates his position and his reasoning, and I came to the conclusion, because he's just being shown science after science after science and facts, right? But I really think that we could take all the science in the world from all the people, the smartest people and everything, and show it to him, and he would be more convinced by a crying Greta Thunberg meme.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
That's how he thinks.
See, my point is, this is what I take it you're contesting, CK, right, is that the non-working class conservatives are, which is to say, including things like Trump supporters, those people are the epitome of petty bourgeois resentment. And so somebody like Haiti, I would take to be a good example of the kind of thing that I'm talking about. She just doesn't know any better than to think that Biden, represents some kind of like alternative. But she actually has like humane attitudes of like disliking racism, disliking misogyny, disliking homophobia, transphobia.
Why do you believe these people have these? Why do you believe that these people have these humane attitudes?
Well, I don't think there's.
Jack, my politics is not informed just by being like, I don't like racism, right? I actually do want other kinds of economic reforms.
Yeah, but we're saying that
I just couldn't believe this joker saying he'd go have this fantastic conversation with the Trump voter. I just think that's hilarious, and he should try.
What I'm trying to understand is why would you not think that they are not the epitomes of petty bourgeois resentment? Like that, when you look at like the people, when you look at what the Trump sort of, if you go outside the working class,
I don't really see a lot of enthusiastic support for Trump among corporate conservatives.
Well, I'm granting you that in the corporate world, liberalism has become the default ideology, right?
I'm talking about colleagues of mine that are conservative. among them, I don't think I've come across a single one that's a big Trump supporter.
Okay, that's a small sample.
Oh, so you're not actually talking about the Trump supporters then?
Well, you're saying you want to leave out the working class, right?
I want to leave out the working class.
Yeah, I can't say that I've come across many enthusiastic Trump supporters.
Okay. So then, Phyllis, this is not actually, your skepticism is in some sense justified, because he just isn't talking about the same demographic that you were skeptical of.
I mean, all of the conservatives that I've spoken to denounced Trump shortly after the Capitol incident.
Okay, well, let's put it this way. Can you broadly characterize what it is that these people have in common? Like, in virtue of what do you classify them as conservatives? And what is it that distinguishes them from the other people that Phyllis had in mind, you know?
Well, I only call them conservatives because that's how they identify.
Right, but what is it that you think makes them identify that way?
A lot of them are very different from each other.
Yeah, but you are trying to make some kind of generalization, right, about that camp, as opposed to what you're calling the liberals, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there must be something that's uniting them as a group.
Well, I can tell you the things that lend themselves to a better conversation, which I perceive. I don't know that that's what they would call the reason that, you know, something that's part of being a conservative. But they're more sincere. I think they're more interested in finding out what the truth is.
But what is it that makes them conservatives?
I don't know.
But you're just saying they use that label. You're just saying they use that label, and it's because they use that label that you're classifying them that way. But you don't actually know what specifically is the reason why they're using that label.
No, I mean, the commitments vary. You know, some of them are just landlords that have an interest in a particular council tax policy. Some of them are atheists. Some of them are Christian. They vary quite a lot. Some of them are very into culture, you know, literature and stuff like that.
Well, I'm not sure that you're saying something that Phyllis would necessarily disagree with, right? Because I think he's saying if you talk to a Trump supporter who was not in the working class, there's no way that you would have more in common with them than, you know.
But who in non-working class conservatism, like who would be a mainstream example of a Trump supporter?
Ted Cruz.
I don't
know.
Really
do you mean like a someone you might have heard of, or do you mean a demographic? Because the demographic
someone that I might have heard of. I don't really know Ted Cruz.
Someone you might have heard of. Well, I don't know, because most of the entertainment. I live in the US, by the way. Most of the entertainment world obviously didn't like him. So I don't know who you would have heard of, you know. But I just think that if you met a few more Trump supporters, working class or not, you would be appalled.
I wasn't really thinking of public figures.
Oh no, I've met loads of working class Trump supporters that I've spoken to. I wasn't
in the US.
I've spoken to a few in the US.
I don't think you can extrapolate what British people think of Trump than what American people think of Trump. Because I think the British supporters might be a bit more rational, right? With the American ones, it's a cult. They hero worship him. And
I don't think that's true about American.
Oh, okay, all right.
I mean, I don't think it's true of American workers. I think it is true that there's this layer of middle-class Trump supporters, of which people like John Lee and Matt Adams belong to.
Matt Adams is working class. Would you not think Matt Adams is working class?
I don't get that impression.
I think so.
Really?
No.
Okay, well, I don't know what your definition of working class is.
Working class makes stupid, Jack.
Jesus.
I mean, do you think you went to college?
No.
Okay. I mean, he works. I don't
Do you think he at least graduated high school, Jack?
Probably, but I don't know what you mean by working class there.
No, I'm thinking about people like who would, where it would be an issue for them, where it could be an issue for them to like join a union.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know if he has the kind of job where he could join a union.
Look, it doesn't really matter that much if he was a worker, even by my accounting. Right?
Why are we wasting time speaking to Heidi?
Well, she interjected.
Okay.
But the point is, I think what Philip was saying was that what he was skeptical of was that if you met a Trump supporter who wasn't a worker, you wouldn't be able to have a productive conversation.
Well, Phyllis, are you talking about, that video that I think you sent me the video of these people going insane?
Yes.
I mean, obviously, I don't think I could have a conversation with them about anything that's worthwhile.
Right.
Do you think that there are more of those on the conservative side than the liberal side? I would say there's way more on the liberal side of that type of hysteria. Something's wrong with your mic, suddenly, by the way. No, is it breaking up for everyone else?
Yeah, no, it's terrible.
Yes.
Wait, is it still bad?
No, that's better.
It's better.
Yeah, so, I think it's more what, in terms of, like, ratio, I mean, I don't know, it's hard to say, but let me put it this way, I don't...
Liberals clearly have the monopoly on hysteria.
Who is this fucking idiot? Who is he? You never seen people at a Trump rally losing their mind? He get impeached twice. They still fucking love him. But the liberals are the crazy ones, right?
But we don't think the impeachments were justified. That's correct.
You think the impeachment is an example of liberal hysteria?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, enjoy your Trump friends. You really like them.
Well, we don't support Trump. We just don't support the impeachment.
But we do support Trump supporters, though, in a way, Jack. Right?
Well, we don't support them qua Trump supporters.
No, that's true.
Well, let me just say...
But Haley just seems like an example of what I'm talking about.
I agree 100%.
She just seems like the perfect example of exactly what I'm describing, which wouldn't happen with a conservative. And Heidi's not like some, she seems like some middle class person. Her middle class equivalent conservative does not sound like that. They make arguments.
Yeah, no.
But you're not talking about the Trump people when you say that.
No, because in my experience, and this includes the Americans, the Americans just all thought that Trump was ridiculous. The conservatives, that is.
Those are not the people. Yeah, but those are not the people that Phyllis is talking about. He's not talking about the people who think that Trump is ridiculous.
If you're talking about those people like in those videos, then no, I don't think I could have this conversation with
Phyllis is talking about people who he encounters on a more or less day-to-day basis, I take it, right?
But give me explain,
because he lives in Texas.
but hold on a second. Explain what what kinds of jobs do they do? Who are what's the demographic? Well, Trump supporters is going to be across many, but Phyllis, I think, is talking about has a smaller group in mind, right?
Well, there are people that are like managers, maybe like small business owners, people that are like teachers or like administrators at school, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Those are the people I have.
See, well, I thought there's definitely a big difference because, for one thing, if you were a Trump supporter where I work, where I work or any of our clients or partner companies, probably nobody would know. Like the only people that are talking openly. The only people that are talking openly about their politics and enforcing their politics at work are liberals.
Yeah, that's not true.
Yeah,
if one of the managers, in any of the surrounding departments was a Trump supporter, I wouldn't even know that unless I had a one-on-one conversation with them and I happened to say something that made them feel comfortable telling me that.
Hey, I got John Lee for you to have a chat with. You'll love him. He's a Trump supporter.
There's almost no one that in fact there is no one I can think of that's just openly a Trump supporter. So it definitely seems very different where Phyllis is. And maybe if I was where you were, I would be saying the same thing the other way around. I kind of doubt it though.
I mean,
President time.
Look, I would just say, right, it's like, people who are Trump supporters here, like, there's no secret about it. Like, they're not ashamed of it or anything like that.
No, all I hear at work when politics comes up is liberalism is just Trump bashing. And that's all you hear at work. If politics comes up. You only hear liberal voices.
Yeah, I mean, I believe that. I just, that might be explained by where we live or something. But it's like, I mean, I hear liberal voices here, but it's like.
No, but I mean, if there was Microsoft offices in Texas or Google offices in Texas, do you think it would be any different?
I don't actually know.
I find it hard to believe that corporate culture in Texas would be different.
Jack, John Lee wants to come up, but I think he's blocked. DK, do you actually want to talk to this guy or not? He's a big Trump supporter.
I don't want to talk to him or you.
Oh, I thought you wanted to talk to Trump supporters because you'd have such great conversations with them and they're truth seekers. I've got one for you. Let's do the experiment. Are you afraid?
Is there any way to pick people? Can we get rid of this clown?
No, don't be mean to Haiti. But
Did you not say you wanted to talk to Trump supporters?
Why shouldn't I be mean to Haiti?
Did you not say you wanted
because
to
Haiti's
talk
my
to Trump
friend.
supporters?
That's Jack. You make questionable friends.
So you don't want to talk to Trump?
I'm going to need a better reason than that.
Because I could have sworn I heard you say you wanted to talk to
I don't mind you disputing with her, but do you not want me to bring?
She's clearly a completely pointless person to speak to.
But do you not want me to bring up John Lee?
Yeah, I thought he wanted to talk to him.
What are you talking about?
You said you'd have such a great conversation.
I think it's insane how much you speak to John Lee.
Did you not say you'd have a great conversation and they're truth seekers, unlike liberals? Or did I mishear?
Can we get rid of this clown? I can't believe that you speak to this person.
But CK, you're just putting Jack in an awkward position now.
Really? Why is that?
Sounds like he doesn't
he's
want
just
to
said
talk to Trump supporters.
Haiti's his friend, and you're just like trying to make Jack choose. It's pretty awkward. I think maybe you should just sort of leave it.
I think Jack is used to this for me. He's been dealing with it for years.
I only came here to get
he's
the
been
Trump
dealing with
supporter
it
to
for the
talk
best part
to.
of a decade. So.
But I guess you don't want to talk to him after all.
What's it like to have such a small five head, Haiti?
Such a small what?
Who is that? Who said that?
I don't know.
Five head.
I don't know what five head is.
Who's saying this?
It's one step.
Rich.
Okay, I guess I apologize, CK. I misunderstood you. I thought you wanted to talk to a Trump supporter. I guess I was wrong.
Wait, isn't James? James is tired of Trump supporter? I might be wrong on that, but I thought I heard him.
Not really. I don't know.
I'm not a Trump supporter, but Jack, could you do me a favor and remove CK as a personal favor to?
No, I can't do that.
I don't care about him being removed. I guess I just misunderstood him when he said he wanted to talk
Okay, look, Jack, she doesn't care. If she doesn't care,
okay.
You can remove her.
No, I said
No, I'm not removing Haiti.
I'm just time he comes up on stage, start shouting about removing people. Just talk.
She's intellectual cancer.
Wait, Jack. If you
I know at least one of them.
CK doesn't have mods.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, Jack, if CK is pushing for the decision, I can make the decision.
No, there's no need to remove Haiti.
Mark, you're gonna kick me?
No, I was gonna kick CK.
Nice.
No, don't do that.
What is with this? I don't like this person. Get him off the stage. Like, just don't engage with him if you don't like him. Quit fucking whining.
Yeah,
oh my
CK,
god.
this is like, just dispute her. I mean,
There's no
surely
dispute.
that-
I was just gonna give him a Trump supporter to talk to. I don't know why he's mad at me.
No, I don't think she's worth speaking to.
Sir, I've never met you before. I don't know who you are. I've never had a conversation with you. I'm sorry you have such a poor opinion.
There's a reason for that.
Well, go ahead.
Okay.
All right, Jack or Phyllis, were you finished making your?
You just seem to be talking about a different demographic, right? You're saying...
Well, I mean, I only know the conservatives I know, right? I mean...
Yeah, but I think what you're when you say that we have more in common with conservatives, it just seems like you're talking about some different demographic than what Rinsler or Manny or Philip or I have in mind.
Yeah, but they're in very different... Like, Rinsler's at a university, right? It's not the same kind of... And I guess so is Phyllis, actually, right?
Yep, or he was. I guess he's... Well, no, he's still teaching. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's not going to be comparable to workplaces.
Well, but I teach at a school, too. Middle school, and I also, like, have to go around and, like, play gigs and stuff like that. I have to interact with more people than I'd like to.
Phyllis is of the view that there's something distinctive about Texas, I think.
No, but
any part of Texas that's not Austin.
I'm not even sure about Austin either, but
I assume that Austin
is CK's point that the working class in the U.S. is predominantly leaning?
No, definitely not.
Because he's right.
No, he doesn't think that.
Yeah,
but that's true.
We don't accept that.
You don't accept that the working class in the United States is predominantly right-leaning?
God. Okay, what were you
I
saying?
don't accept that either, no.
Yeah, well, statistics are.
Well, I just don't understand how you could dispute
class
that.
or Democrats.
Because I don't think it's true. I don't know if I would prescribe to a majority of the working class, at least in the United States, either conservatism or liberalism.
Oh my God, the whole conversation.
What is happening? Why? Just please, for the love of God, CK, what were you saying? Or where were you going?
Well, I think, like, depending on what type of institution you're looking at, the way that these things manifest is gonna vary a lot.
Well, that's true. I mean, it's true, right, that, like, the people I interact with at, like, the university are more liberal than the ones I interact with at, like, the school or at gigs or whatever. But even that's contextual, right? Because
my experience is very skewed, right? It's basically all corporate culture, all working class people. I don't have any recent experience of universities or schools, but they're going to be more free in general, right? People are going to be less coerced in general, I would think.
That's right. I mean, I think that's right, as far as I can tell.
I think if you find something irritating, there's a good chance I would find it irritating too. Like, I'd be very surprised if I would react much differently than you to the people that you're talking about.
Here's what I think would be irritating. Here's something that I think is very irritating.
Just on the same token, I think that you react the same as me to people like Haiti, and a lot of these liberals are even worse.
Well, I agree with liberals in general. Yeah, I feel the same way that you do about them in terms of how irritating they are. I just don't think. This is what I was gonna say. I was gonna say, the people I have in mind, right, are people who say they're conservative, have some set of, whatever conservative.
Oh,